Hello everybody, welcome to Austin Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers on this channel by the end of the year, so your subscription would be much appreciated. I have to say real quick, if there is some echo in this room, I apologize for that. There is nothing in this room right now besides for this set, and this is actually one of the last two videos that I will ever be recording in this room as I'm finally moving out. So that is why there is an echo. It was already kind of bad before because I'd moved some stuff out. Now it's definitely very evident. But anyways, with that said, today's video is about Klay Thompson, and this is the last discussion video I am doing before the season starts. And I wanted to talk about Klay Thompson in particular because I feel like it's almost like, how do I phrase this? It's like a given. Like, people are like, okay, Klay Thompson comes back, boom, Warriors better. And sure, that is true. However, I don't think there is enough attention and enough conversation around the potential that, in fact, it's not going to just work out that simply, and Klay is not really going to be all that great when he comes back for the Warriors. I don't feel like a lot of people have properly appreciated the scope of the injuries that Klay Thompson has experienced, because he first tore his ACL in the NBA Finals. That is all well known. He was supposed to come back a year after that, because that's around the timetable of that injury, sometimes a little bit shorter, but roughly speaking. But then he ended up, I don't remember the specifics of how it happened, maybe he was practicing or doing rehabilitation or whatever, but he then proceeded to tear his Achilles, which is pretty much commonly considered the worst injury in basketball. I mean, like, the worst injury you typically get playing basketball. Getting shot in the face is probably worse for your basketball ability than tearing your Achilles, but usually that doesn't happen on a basketball court. But the point is, ACL tear, Achilles tear, and then 2 years away from playing NBA basketball. The last time Klay Thompson played basketball, I was a teenager, and I realized people are like, wow, I didn't know he played basketball in 1996. Shut the fuck up. I'm 21 years old. Anyways, it's been a while since Klay has played basketball, and he's had two bad injuries, one of which is one of the worst injuries, if not the worst, that a basketball player can get. So why is, and I don't want to come off too mean here because I want to be wrong here, but why is it just seen as like a given, like, oh yeah, Klay's going to come back and he's going to be perfectly fine and things are going to work out? Like, I want Klay Thompson to come back and everything be correct. Klay is one of my, I kind of say that a lot of players are one of my favorite players, but Klay Thompson is definitely up there for me. I appreciate him when the Warriors were the Warriors pre-Kevin Durant. I loved that team and was very happy to see them succeed. But, Klay Thompson, the odds of him coming back and being as good as he was back in 2019 and previous to that are pretty low because, it's worth mentioning that Klay is one of these players that I don't think his game will be, it's not athletically based. That's the thing that people commonly say, and sometimes to an extent that is a little bit too black and white, because like, you can be a player who's not that athletic, but then there are elements of athleticism that are under-mentioned that play into how a player is effective, and that can affect a non-athletic player. Getting injured is still not good, and not playing NBA level basketball for 2 years is still not good. But for example, defense is a thing that I could see dropping off for Klay Thompson. I think his jump shot will be fine, but there's elements of that we'll talk about in a second that might not necessarily be fine. But Klay Thompson has always been a good to great defender, like just below all defensive caliber type of guy defensively. And that ability that he brings offensively with his size at the two guard position has been a very big part of the Warriors' success defensively over the last couple of seasons when he has been healthy. The wing defensive depth that they have had those years, on top of Draymond Green being probably the best team defender of all time, certainly in that conversation, and just orchestrating a fantastic Warriors defense. His defense and what he's brought to the table has been a big part of the Warriors' success. Not as big as his three-point shooting, but a pretty big contributing factor, and that's something I think we could see have a serious decline because his physicality and his strength and all of that stuff and his lateral quickness, even though Klay's not the fastest player in the world, those things can be harmed by injuries like this. And it's also, you know, if you have these kind of injuries, you're going to be more likely to want to take plays off and things like that. So that could be a factor. Maybe his effort level defensively just kind of inherently has to be less so than it has been. And then offensively, while, yeah, Klay Thompson, I don't think he's going to have much of a difference in terms of his ability to put an open three-pointer in the basket. What is not talked about enough, and just in basketball in general, is off-ball creation and off-ball creating ability. Klay Thompson is someone who dropped 60 points on like 3 dribbles or whatever the specific numbers were. Klay is one of the most elite off-ball players that the game has ever seen, and it's not just because he can hit a catch-and-shoot jump shot. It's because he creates opportunities for himself with his constant movement off of the ball, and that kind of stuff requires athleticism. It requires being there physically, fully there, and even if I'm sure Klay will be in NBA level shape and he'll be able to replicate that stuff pretty closely, it's something I could see falling off for sure. And just looking at the Warriors are this year, I think they would be a playoff team this year even without Klay returning, because the internal improvement of Jordan Poole and the added players to the roster that made the roster better, and I just think the system overall with the Warriors last year got better as the year progressed and really showed promise, and I think they would have actually been a threat in the playoffs had they made the play-in. And then the Grizzlies, of course, had that fantastic game against them that halted that happening. But the point is, I think the Warriors were already a playoff team pre-Klay Thompson, but Klay is kind of like the key. That is, adding Klay to this team now makes them contender. And I've expressed now, I made a video on the subject, and I got a lot of comments that were like, the title of the video was, "Are the Warriors contenders?" And a lot of people were like, what do you mean, are they contenders? Obviously they're contenders. And it was my lack of confidence in Klay Thompson that was pretty much entirely my reasoning behind being like, I don't know that they're inherently, oh yeah, they're definitely contenders with Klay Thompson coming back, because we don't know for sure that we're getting the Klay Thompson that we knew. So with the Warriors, I think being a borderline playoff team, and then you add Klay Thompson to the equation, let's say Klay is just an all-right to pretty good defensive player, and then his off-ball ability is decreased to the point where he's more like a 17, 16 even point per game guy, and like Jordan Poole has a bigger role in the offense than he does. At that point, I don't think Klay is enough to put them in the contender category. If he has that kind of a dip where he's not quite a 20, 22 point per game guy, is more of a 17 point per game guy. Maybe even his 3-point efficiency takes a little bit of a dip because he's less capable of creating open looks. And then his defense is not like just below all defense, and it's now just like, yeah, he's a good defender, but he's nothing exceptional. Then that would definitely be enough of a decline for Klay Thompson to where I don't know that I'm going to put the Warriors in the contender category. So in terms of what we can expect from Klay this year, I mean, it's also very well possible that I'm saying all of this and then Klay comes back and he's perfectly fine. But I just think in general with the conversation around the Warriors, it's gone undermentioned that Klay has not played basketball in 2 years. He's had an ACL injury, which is bad, and then he had the Achilles injury, which is really bad. So the odds that he comes back and is the exact same player we knew are not the highest in the world, and people acting like it is, I don't really understand why. I do think it comes from a place of optimism and just like, it is good to be optimistic, but at the same time, you also have to be realistic and be prepared for those not so great scenarios. And I think a lot of people haven't really done that with the Warriors. So I guess that's what this video was. I very much hope that I'm wrong that there's a decline with Klay Thompson. Because as I mentioned, love the Warriors before Kevin Durant went to that team. And I've been rooting for them ever since he left. And hasn't happened since he's left because they have been unhealthy overall. But that team healthy, if Klay comes back and he's fully Klay, then yeah, they're definitely a contender. But I don't think that's a guarantee, unfortunately. But yeah, that is it. Goodbye. Also, next video on this channel should be a post-game recap because the season is going to be here on Tuesday? Wednesday? Whichever one is the 19th. Whatever. Bye.